Books, books, I love books. I'm gonna read them all. Hi readers, Chris here. Today I'm going to be doing a full-length breakdown of From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Armentrout. I have heard her compared to Sarah J. Maas, who, as you know, I read my first Sarah J. Maas books earlier this year with the Crescent City books, and just finally read From Blood and Ash. As per usual, I'm going to be talking about three things: world building, characters, and plot. Not going to get into any spoilers right now. If you want a spoiler discussion, let me know in the comment section below. First, let me start with the setup, the setting of this world from Blood and Ash. So there is a kingdom, the kingdom of Solace, I call it, Solace, and there's a young girl, her name is Poppy. Poppy is our main character, Penelope, and Poppy is something that is called a maiden. And what this means, well, actually, I don't think the book does a super good job of saying that, what it means, but for the short version is that she was chosen at birth to be like this chosen maiden of the gods, because in this world there are gods, and if you are blessed by the gods, you become ascended, you basically become immortal. And they don't really explain why it's important to have this maiden, but a maiden only comes around like once in a generation, once in a century. So from birth, Poppy has been chosen to be this maiden. And as the maiden, what it basically means is that she is destined to be given over to the gods. So she's going to ascend, she's going to be given over to the gods. They don't really say what that means, but what it means for Poppy is that in order for her to ascend, in order for her to be given to the gods, she has to be like pure of heart, pure of mind, pure of body. So she constantly wears a veil. She does not let others see her face. She can't, she's not supposed to talk to people like common people, so most people don't even know what she sounds like. And of course, she's not supposed to have any physical kind of touching with anyone. When the book opens, Poppy is in the point in her life where she's a teenager, and as you know, teenagers, a lot of hormones and all that stuff. She's really starting to question why her life has not belonged to her up until this point, why she doesn't have any choices, why she can't make choices for herself, etc., etc., etc. I'll talk a little bit more about Poppy in a minute, but I just kind of want to finish laying the groundwork here, because not only do we have this kingdom of immortals and humans and blah 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 blah, but they are constantly under attack by these quote-unquote evil creatures that they call the Craven. And the Craven supposedly kind of come from this other kingdom that they used to fight with a lot, but they defeated this other kingdom, Atlantis, and that kingdom has fallen. But there's this rumor that there's this dark power that's starting to rise over there, this dark one. And because there's this other kingdom and there's all these rumors and blah, 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 Poppy thinks that kind of the fate of Solace rests on her shoulders. She's the one that's going to help save and protect the kingdom from this other dark force that's kind of starting to invade. So that's the basic setup. So let's talk a little bit more about Poppy. So as I mentioned, Poppy is this maiden. She's supposed to be, sweet, virginal, innocent, but pretty much within the first chapter, you learn that Poppy is really not those things at all. She pretends to be them, but then she also sneaks out of the castle to go explore local taverns. She gets secret weapons training from one of her guards. One of the guards that's supposed to give his life to protect her has been training her how to protect herself. And of course, she meets another guard in the beginning of the book named Hawk. And Hawk becomes a very, very, very important presence in her life. Hawk becomes one of her guards, a personal guard that is supposed to protect her with his life, that is supposed to ensure that she gets to her ascension, that she is pure and untouched. But lo and behold, there is a romantic connection between Poppy and Hawk, and, you know, things ensue. For all intensive purposes, yes, this is a fantasy, but this is a fantasy romance. So the romance portion of this book is just as big, if not bigger, than like the fantasy portion of this book. So it's not just one or the other. It is truly a blend of both, which I think is one of the reasons that this gets compared to Sarah J. Maas a lot. Because her books are very, very, very heavy fantasy, but also very heavy romance as well. I really liked Poppy as a character. I really liked her. I really like that we get to see everything kind of through her mind, through her first person perspective. And I really, really like that because she struggles a lot, especially in the beginning of the book, trying to balance this really super important like goal that's been put on her shoulders, but also balancing like what she really wants in life. Like, should she give herself to the gods without ever feeling the pleasure of another human contact with another person? Like, that's a serious question. So I really enjoyed her through most of the book. I enjoyed that she took steps to protect herself. I like that she, you know, has a little bit of her own agency, some of her own convictions. Now, I will say towards the end of the book, there's something that happens, and there's a weird dynamic that happens with her and one of the other characters that switches the power dynamic a little bit. I'm trying to be vague without giving away spoilers here, but let's just say that through most of the book, like, Poppy is kind of the one that has all the power, because even though she's this maiden, even though she's all this other stuff, she has this power, especially when it comes to Hawk, because Hawk is so like besotted with her, so like, oh, he can't keep his hands off of her, can't keep his eyes off of her, so she kind of has this sexy power over him. But by the end of the book, that changes, and it changes in a way where she's not in power, she's not in control anymore. And I did not like that. I did not like that at all, because I thought up until that point that she really had power over herself, and I didn't like where their relationship ended up. With that said, so now let me talk about Hawk a little bit. Again, I really liked Hawk in the beginning. Poppy and Hawk meet in like the first chapter of the book, and then it's one of those, like, they chance meet each other, and then she doesn't see him for a while, and then all of a sudden he comes back into her life. And from the beginning, you never really know, like, what Hawk's deal is, because he's not like all the other guards that Poppy has had in her life up until this point. Up until this point, all the men in her life have either been, you know, close confidants and friends. There's the one guy I mentioned, Victor, who taught her how to fight, but she's never had someone like Hawk who, for all intents and purposes, like, lets Poppy do what she wants to do, encourages her to, like, find little moments of freedom, to find little moments of happiness. In the beginning of the book, he's actually a really good influence on her life. Like, he's really good for her, and she's really good for him. But it gets to the point where, like, you start to wonder what is really going on with him, because he's obviously doing things that he shouldn't be doing, considering Poppy is supposed to be this pure maiden, you know, etc., etc. Like, things got a little steamy between them, like, real steamy. So then there's something that happens. There's a twist that happens, and this is a little bit into plot territory, but let's just say there is a twist that happens, and you start to find out who Hawk really is, which I'm not going to say. But Hawk is not who he presented himself to be. Whoever you thought he was, it's not who he is. And I was completely shocked, completely blown away by that. If I had been paying attention, maybe I could have guessed. Like, I think it's in there if you're paying attention, but I was shocked. I was shocked. So when you find out who Hawk really is, like I said, the dynamic between the two changes. It changes, and it changes in a weird way that I'm not 100% a fan of. Now, I will say that because it's so shocking and Poppy herself is very shocked, maybe she's just not in the right headspace, so maybe in future books it'll change. I hope it does, because their relationship by the end of this book reminds me of 50 Shades of Grey. And not like kinky, not like that stuff, but if you've read 50 Shades of Grey, you'll know that like Christian has this very controlling presence over, oh, I forget what her name is, Anastasia, over her life. Like, this is what you have to eat. This is what you have to wear. I care about you so much that I'm basically gonna stalk you and blah, 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 blah. And I don't like that. I don't like that. So even if maybe Poppy is feeling mad, but he's like, oh, I'm going to force you to eat because I know it's best for you. Like that kind of stuff. I'm just like, I didn't really like that. I didn't really like that. I know there is something, you know, romantic that, oh, the big strong man is taking care of you when you can't take care of yourself. But that's not what I wanted for Poppy. So hopefully she goes back to being like the cool, confident, you know, kick-ass girl that she was throughout most of this book. So now I'm going to talk briefly about the plot. I did just mention that there is a big twist, you know, towards the end of this book that I did not see coming. The plot of this book is really good. I can't think of a better word to describe it. From chapter 1, when I started reading it, like, there was no point in this story that I wanted to put it down. No point. It starts off super strong, super sexy, and it just keeps going from there. There is constant, like, action. There's constant character development. There's constant plot development. Like, there is a constant stream of stuff to just, like, there's just a constant stream of stuff going on, which makes this book really fun and really interesting to read. Like, it's not a small book. It is just over 600 pages. Like, it's a chunker, but I never once felt that this book was too long. If anything, I feel like it's too short because, like I said, I didn't quite like the way it ended, so I would have appreciated a few more chapters or like a whole nother section where that could have resolved itself a little bit. So hoping that it resolves itself in the next book, which I will definitely be reading. So how does this book compare to Sarah J. Maas? Well, I've heard that like their books are considered something that's called quote unquote new adult. And I have not looked this up. I probably should have looked this up before making this video. But to me, from what I've heard and seen about a new adult, it's like they basically take YA type stories and just make them more like R-rated with like sex and language and violence and stuff. So yes, this book, I can definitely see why this book is considered an adult story and not a YA story, because there is sex in it, there is violence in it, and there is some cursing in it. But however, the cursing that happens in this book is not nearly to the level that it is in Sarah J. Maas's books. In Crescent City, I think every single character curses in that story, like all the time. That is not the case in this book. That is not the case. If a character curses in this book, it is for a purpose. It's either like a shock, surprise, like it is for a purpose. So it does not happen all the time, and when it does, it's there for a reason. Number one. Number two, when it comes to these sex scenes, which there are more than one in here, there is more than one, they are not vulgar in the way that I think Sarah J. Maas is. I know people love Sarah J. Maas. I know that they do. But to me, like, even when she was writing her sex scenes, there's a little bit of a vulgarity to it. Like, the words and terms that she uses, like, the things that people do. I know some people like it. It's just not my thing. So these sex scenes in here are way less vulgar. They're more sweet. But they're still sexy and hot and steamy and still give you that tingly feeling, but it's just not, it made me feel differently than the sex scenes in Crescent City did. Hopefully that makes sense. I know this is like a weird thing to be talking about in a book review. How do you feel about sex scenes? But needless to say, I think this series so far is better than Crescent City. So if you are someone who's like me, who thinks that Sarah J. Maas is just a bit too much, I would say give this one a chance because it's very similar, but I like this one 100% better, 100 times better. I think I've talked about sex for long enough today, so if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel for more bookish stuff coming your way soon. All right, everyone, happy reading.